morning, everyone, and welcome back to TIC Talks, our series of conversations with the CEOs from the TIC sector. Each time we try to invite one of our members to share their experience, their perspective with the audience. And I'm absolutely delighted to have today with us Pedro Sancha, the CEO of NSF. Welcome, Pedro.
Thank you, Hanan, and it's good to see you again after a week together in China.
Absolutely. So, Pedro, you're relatively new to the TIC sector, relatively new to TIC Council. You have engineering backgrounds, and you came from Shell and Ecolab, so not far remote from the culture of safety and trust of the TIC sector. And today we will touch on this new chapter in your career in the TIC world, and obviously your leadership style and experiences that brought you to this role. I, of course, as usual, I invite the audience to make the most of the time of Pedro and send him questions. You have the opportunity to interact directly with the CEO, captain of our industry. So make the most of it, either during or after. We'll be happy to share the questions with Pedro's team. So before we delve, Pedro, I always love to go back to the basics and ask who is the person I'm talking to. So who is Pedro?
Well, that's a question that has always many parts. So I start by saying that if the audience is confused by my accent, it's because I've been a global traveler since I was born. I grew up in North Africa with Spanish parents, and then lived and worked in several countries in Europe, in Asia, and in North America. So that made me a global citizen that enjoys working in multicultural environments, and that includes home, by the way. I'm also an engineer at heart, as you said, so I've always found fascinating the opportunities to leverage science and technology to solve big problems. So I spent the earlier part of my career working with Shell on the energy transition, and then with Ecolab on water management. And when the NSF board of directors reached out to me 2.5 years ago to discuss the opportunity to lead an organization like NSF, I just jumped on it.
Wonderful.
Also importantly, I'm a father of a wonderful boy who's turning 13 tomorrow.
Wow.
On election day.
Teenager. Oh.
Yeah, preteen, as he says.
Super. Pedro, thank you so much for sharing with us about your background, your career, citizen of the world, indeed, a father, CEO, and you became CEO of NSF in 2022, obviously bringing a wealth of experience from your previous role in Ecolab and in Shell. So what's one aspect of your mission here at NSF, or NSF's mission and improving human health and the environment, that you wish you had known when you were back with Shell and Ecolab, and what has surprised you most about this role that you have currently?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm relatively new to the TIC sector and also obviously to NSF. So the last 2 years have been an intense learning process for me. And I'll say one thing that really energized me about the TIC industry is that unlike the industrial sector where I come from, which is more capital intensive, the TIC industry is people intensive. So attracting, developing, and retaining top talent has been my #1 priority from day one. And with regards to NSF, I was familiar, obviously, with its rich heritage in public health and its iconic blue logo, which you can find in many nutritional water products. But one aspect that is very unique about NSF is that we're a standards development body. And I was surprised by the amount of complexity and the scientific rigor that goes into developing consensus standards between regulators, consumer groups, and manufacturers. And then one thing that surprised me about the CEO role is that the title is misleading, meaning it implies that our main job is to make executive decisions. While for me, it's been really about being out there, building the culture, the team, and the structure that we need to scale up our mission. So I think it would have been more appropriate to have on my business card the title of Chief Architect, for example.
Well, that's a really beautiful way to phrase it, because, as you said, in our sector we are more human capital, a human resource, a human intensive in the services that we provide. So indeed, you are an architect of a vision and a mission, and to a certain extent, the chief cheerleader, I would say, of the organization. So tomorrow is election days in the US, and here in Europe we're all following very closely. There are a lot of changes, and actually today, this week in Europe, confirmation hearings actually are ongoing of the new European Commission. So a lot is happening. So looking ahead, how do you expect the public health policies and the TIC sector to evolve and to change with these sort of tectonic changes that we're going through?
Indeed. So we've seen governments getting more serious about regulating areas that traditionally fell in between the cracks, like the cosmetics industry, for example, and also raising the bar in terms of the substantiation of claims in the food and nutrition industry. That includes, for example, here in the US, the strengthening of the organic certification, as well as the increased scrutiny on the dietary supplements industry. We also see more concern with emerging contaminants that until very recently, we were unable to trace in small quantities, such as the presence of PFAS, microplastics in our water systems, as well as heavy metals in the food supply chain. And we're seeing towards a trend of localizing public health standards, more notably in China, with its ambitious China 2035 agenda. When I think about the TIC industry, the biggest opportunity I see is for us to accelerate the adoption of new technologies. From the external benchmarks that I've seen, we seem behind the curve relative to other service industries. And one area that I know we talked a lot with the TIC Council that I'm very passionate about is the potential of AI to reshape our industry.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking just about how we operate internally, but also the opportunity to leverage AI to reshape the way our clients think about risk management from the traditional reactive approach to a more proactive, even predictive approach. At NSF, for example, we've been using AI to help US water utilities locate and replace lead-containing water pipes.
Wow.
Which is a lot more efficient than having those utilities dig out miles and miles of water pipes to see where the lead-containing pipes are. And just consider the potential use of AI to track the spread of novel diseases before they become a pandemic. But all these new technologies will need to partner with strong human intelligence. And that's where I think our jobs are going to get really interesting.
Yeah, so that's the message, obviously reassuring, and a message of hope. So AI is not replacing, is helping, is a tool.
It's augmenting.
Exactly.
The work we do.
We're still in need of human talent.
Pretty
so,
much.
Pedro, like many of the leaders of our industry, you mentioned earlier that you are an engineer indeed. So can you share with us a specific instance where your pragmatic approach, your scientific background has driven a significant innovation or solution in your career?
Yeah, so as engineers, we're trained to solve complex, multifaceted problems with limited amount of information and resources, including time. And I found these techniques very useful in my day-to-day job. One simple thing I do is whenever my team comes with a new proposal, I always ask them, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Because I know as an engineer that without a clear problem statement and scope, we might just waste a lot of time and not get to a good outcome. Another technique I leverage, I encourage my team to break down the problems into manageable pieces as opposed to trying to eat the whole elephant. And I also like to use the concept of rapid iteration. So I always ask my team to come up with a prototype of an idea before they spend a lot of time on the content. For instance, my team is not used to me asking them about, show me a straw man of the presentation before they start working on the content. And related to that, a very powerful technique we use all the time is pilots. I like to pilot new ideas before you scale them up. Yeah. And we use that everywhere, from experimenting with new working arrangements post-COVID to piloting a new software before we roll it out across our network of laboratories. It just helps you course correct and make sure you mitigate the risk of scaling the wrong approach.
So this is a very nice transition into my next question, Pedro. Obviously, throughout your career, you have led a diversity of teams globally, remotely, and you talked already about your mission being a bit of a chief architect. So what strategies do you find more effective in leadership here, in building and maintaining the motivation of your teams, the engagement with your vision, specifically where we have teams with various backgrounds, and as I said, in a global context, a variety of cultures?
Yeah, so good question. I start by saying that building diverse, high-purpose, high-performing teams has been the most rewarding part of my job. It's also the most challenging. So I'll start with the obvious. You first need to make sure you have the right talent in the right place. Once you have assembled a team of strong individual players, it's very important, though, that you invest in coaching them so they operate effectively as a team. And in order to do this, it's very important to build a culture of feedback. So here at NSF, for example, we use 360s and coaching to help out leaders uncover the blind spots and also better leverage their strengths. And by the way, I think it's important that we as leaders role model that culture by asking our teams, how can I become a better leader? And listen to their feedback. Yeah. I also learned that great teams are ultimately built on a foundation of trust. And on that, I'm very old school. I think nothing beats spending face-to-face time with your teams. That's why we're very intentional about doing offsites for a couple of days when we all come together. And also very important to me is that the days of command and control are gone. High-performing teams like to be empowered. They want to know where you want to take them, the direction, but they want to feel empowered to develop their own playbook. And that has been the trickiest part for me, letting go of the how while holding the team accountable for the what. And the way I go around this challenge is by setting clear expectations up front and then building a strong operational cadence grounded on KPIs.
So that's actually a very progressive way of looking at leadership, Pedro, and indeed very challenging to let go and to delegate what sometimes we enjoy in the job, right?
You do, and you realize that what made you successful, until now, which is solving problems yourself, is not what is going to make you successful as a leader. It's a lot more about not just providing direction, but inspiration to your teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And elaborating a little bit on this, we are in in a time of history, where there are various generations that are in the workforce, between the millennials, Generation Z, etc. And it's that there's huge cultural differences between those generations. So how do you navigate this cross-generational leadership? And then do you have any advice for the emerging leaders in our audience about being effective nowadays?
Well, you're right. It's crazy that for the first time in history, we have 5 generations working side by side. We have the Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, but also members of the silent generation who are still working in the 70s and 80s. And in practice, that means that the range of priorities, feelings, and expectations that your employees bring to the workforce is wider than ever. So some might prioritize work-life balance and diversity, inclusiveness initiatives. Others are looking to establish meaningful connections and looking for purpose in the work, career advancement, career progression, you name it. It's a pretty broad range of expectations. So my advice to emerging leaders is, first of all, spend time understanding what drives your team. Never make the mistake, which I did early in my career, of assuming everybody shares your own drivers. Second, I think it's important to articulate as a leader a compelling vision that everybody can rally behind. I call it the maximum common denominator. And once you have articulated that vision, be intentional about cascading that down through the layers of the organization. I personally like to use an omni-channel communication strategy. So I'm very intentional about leveraging selected social media channels like we're doing right now, but also hosting face-to-face fireside chats, town halls when I travel around the world. The bottom line is that the days of one-size-fits-all leadership are gone. It's about being a leader for all. And while you cannot be everything to everyone, just having that awareness of what these different groups of employees expect of you as a leader will help you make sure you have a more engaged workforce and that you can bring everybody along the journey.
Yeah, these are these words, Pedro. Thank you so much. That's really enlightening. And I'm wondering, actually, given that you have this global citizen background, you shared with us that you were born a global traveler. You speak so many languages. You have an extremely rich background as a citizen of the world. Do you think that having these experiences of living in different countries, obviously having to adjust to different cultures, to fit into different cultures, do you think this has shaped your leadership style and your approach to global business challenges, and getting this fundamental understanding there is no silver bullet solution, and that you have to be a leader to basically each person, that you have to adjust, not the other way around?
Absolutely. So having been exposed to multicultural environments since young age has taught me as a business leader that a cookie cutter approach doesn't work. So I've seen American and European multinationals getting it wrong again and again, trying to grow in international markets by exporting programs and parachuting expats from their home markets. So my takeaway is that in order to be global, you really have to be local. That's what I call the glocal approach. And if you look at our industry, for example, I believe we have an opportunity and even a responsibility to spread best practices. After all, science travels very well. So if we find a way to keep E. coli out of our food service restaurants here, we should absolutely export that program. However, risk management can be very context dependent. And that's why I learned you have to have local insights to tackle them. Yeah. As an example, our food auditors, when they're inspecting an asparagus farm in Peru, they're going to be looking for traces of heavy metals like cadmium that might be leaking from nearby mining operations. But when our food auditors are inspecting a blueberry farm in Canada, they're going to be more concerned with the appropriate use of approved pesticides. In other instances, I learned that there might be reasons why you have to adapt your programs to drive local adoption. Staying in the food safety example, the Chinese consumers have shown that they're willing to pay a premium for organically certified produce. However, for a number of reasons, there might be reluctance to adopt a US guideline. So our local team worked with our global food experts to develop a local organic certification made in China for the Chinese consumers. These are just examples, but the key for me is that you need to flex your approach to the markets you serve and ensure you build strong teams who are close to your local customers.
Yeah, I think that's indeed, again, another very relevant insight. And the key word there is global, that I'm hoping the audience has retained. I wonder if I can push it a little bit here, Pedro. I know that you've been very open with us, and I wonder if you would be willing to share a failure example, the most poignant leadership failure that you had, and what you learned from it.
Yeah, so absolutely. I have no problems confessing that I'm a work in progress leader. I've made a ton of mistakes through my career. I still make them every day. I just try to make different mistakes. And I actually do think is if you're not failing, you're not trying hard, you're not exposing yourself to different challenges. Having said that, I would say that while I have avoided like a fatal career-ending mistake, my blind spot has been when I focus so much on the goals or the tasks that I lose sight of the people who make them happen. So as I mentioned, I was trained as an engineer. So early in my career, I relied a lot on my problem solving skills. And as I grew up, my responsibilities, I realized that in order to succeed, it was not really about me solving problems. It was about building an inspiring team. So I have to learn to lean on the people side. So for instance, young professional Pedro, when he was doing one-on-one with his team, I'll just go through straight into the to-do list, tell me how you're doing on this and that, When now I realize I spend a lot more time checking in with my teams. I do skip levels interviews, so also try and connect with their direct reports and just listen, ask a lot of open-ended questions, trying to understand where the head is. Because I realized that to be successful, particularly in our industry, which is a people industry, you have to kind of balance those two sides, the rational, problem-solving, analytical side, as well as the people side. So I would say this has been my work in progress area, keeping that balance right.
No, thank you for being candid with us, Pedro. I love the work in progress, aren't we all? And I hope that we stay work in progress until we die. Ultimately, that means that every day is a learning opportunity, right? We all have people in our lives, Pedro, that we look up to, that have inspired us, maybe inspired us in the choice of our careers and studies. Or so for you, who or maybe what inspired and motivated you along the way?
Good question. So I had the chance to work with a lot of inspirational colleagues and leaders, and I learned a lot from them. But if I have to sort of single out one person that has had the most impact in my life, that would be my mother. So my sister and I went through challenging times when we were young, and my mom worked really hard to get us a head start in life. And I'm of the belief that the challenges the crucibles we go through in life really forge our characters as leaders. As the saying goes, what doesn't kill you make you stronger. So from those years, I learned that you need to stay always hungry, trying to learn and grow, persevere in the face of obstacles, give your best every day, and also make sure you look after the people around you. So that's what I learned from her.
Well, congratulations to her for making contributing to society with such a fantastic leader, and congratulations to you for having a mom that taught you resilience and empathy, and that is your inspiration.
Absolutely.
We are coming to the end of our interview, and I'm looking to see if there are any questions. I see greetings from people. So wishing you good day to you both. Wishing everyone obviously a wonderful week. And that brings me to my last question to you, Pedro, and to people that are listening here. I'm pretty sure they would want to hear your advice, specifically to young professionals who are just starting their careers and that looking at you as their role model, who would want to be one day Pedro Sancha. What would you give them as a recommendation? I see there is a question that arrived. So.
All right, so to the young professionals in the room, I would say I have good and bad news. The good news is you have a lot of time to experiment and figure out what ticks with you, pun intended. The bad news is that time goes faster than you think. So you have to be really intentional about what set of experiences, skill sets you want to expose yourself to or learn. And sometimes it takes some iterations. In my case, for example, I went to management consulting right after I graduated from engineering school. And while I got a lot of intellectual stimulation from working with various colleagues on high stakes projects and interacting with very senior leaders. I realized I enjoyed a lot more, and quite frankly, I was a lot better at running businesses and building teams than managing projects and advising others what to do. So I pivoted into commercial roles with P&L and teams. But the point is, you need to know, based on where you're going, say you want to build a career in finance and one day become a CFO. So you need to have in mind what our chief people officer calls your professional bingo card. So if you play bingo, you know you have those cases, you have to tick some boxes to win. So that's why when we think, for example, about building bench for my executive team, we expose talent to multiple parts of the business, to multiple geographies, and even give them cross-functional experience to make sure one day they're ready to lead a global division or function. But ultimately, it's important to tick all that, put the right tools in your box, if you will. It's key. However, careers are made out of the relationships that you build along the way. So my last advice to the young professionals is make sure you're intentionally invest in building and maintaining meaningful relationships, because you don't know who's going to be your next boss, mentor, director, or help you co-fund your business 20 years down the road.
Thank you, Pedro. And honestly, to the female talents and who wants to build a career that are listening, I can repeat this from Pedro. Please seize this advice, because women, we are so bad at having that bingo card, and we are so bad at leveraging and building the relevant network. So please, 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 please embed this in your professional strategy. And I have a question actually from a lady. We still have 1 minute. So we have Kali Louise, and she asks you, as the CEO, what qualities do you look for in emerging leaders?
So I'll pick two. One is curiosity, and the second is self-awareness. I'm of the belief that self-awareness and curiosity are the biggest predictors of success. And I do actually test those in the interviews. My team knows that. I always ask them about what are you working on as a leader? You know, what is the one area that people say you need to start doing or do differently, and see what they answer, and you get a lot from that.
That's brilliant. The Johari window, enlarging it. And yes, self-awareness and curiosity also indeed starts with learning who we are as well. Thank you so much for that. Can you take yet another question, Pedro?
Sure.
Wonderful. So from Cassidy Abernathy, as a global traveler and citizen, is there anywhere you haven't lived or visited that you want to travel to in 2025?
Well, it's interesting because as you know, NSF, it's a global company. We have clients in 110 countries, and I thought I'd traveled a lot before, but there's still a few countries that I've visited this year that I haven't been to, and there's still a few offices I like to visit that I haven't been to. South Africa, Chile, Romania, for example, are countries I haven't been to where we do have offices. So I hope to be there and meet the team soon.
No, I'm sure the team is looking forward to it. Big thanks, Pedro, for being candid, for sharing your insights. It's been fantastic listening to you and hosting you. And actually, we have a testimonial from a team member of yours saying that he's proud to work at NSF and the continued pursuit of DE&I in the current environment. So kudos to you, kudos to your team. And as far as TIC Council goes, we are absolutely proud to have you amongst our members. And I'm delighted to have you, Pedro, in the global board. Thank you for your support. Thank you for accepting my invitation.
No, thank you for the chat, and thank you for all the work you do, Hanan, to make our industry the voice of trust. I think we should all be very proud of working for an industry that creates trust, ensures also people have access to vital products, and keeps everything and everyone safe.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're absolutely proud to be that voice of the trust industry. So thank you so much, Pedro. A huge thanks to all that have followed us during this half hour. I personally look forward to another talk with another captain of the industry. And I wish you all a wonderful week and a lovely rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Soon.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.